So when did we first hear about this?
What's that? Which one?
The SB.
The SB 136. I just heard about 2-3 weeks ago. But it's been in there for a while. I'm just trying to get all the rundown on it and see what they're talking about.
I'm looking at the sections of it right now. Be enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas. Chapter 471, Texas Indian Affairs Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the Texas Indian Affairs Commission is to serve as a liaison between this state and the Indian tribes of this state and to assist indigenous communities with social and economic development. So I guess the question is, without reading further, are they talking about federally recognized tribes?
Well, that's a question we're concerned about, because I think it's going to actually, a lot of the tribes that are saying that they're state recognized, it'll get them the recognition that they need through the state, which is, I think, the only affirmative solution that I see with it. My concern is that Texas has such a large capacity of indigenous people, and I use the word indigenous as a catch-all term, and then you're looking at the people that are not doing anything at the front lines to protect the sacred sites, and that's my concern being here. And I need to be aware of how we're.
Your mic is over there.
Sorry, the microphone. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So, trying to get used to the microphone and everything. So, I think that. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but.
Well, so with the whole needing a commission to act as a liaison to tribes in the state, and if we're just talking about federally recognized tribes, that doesn't include us as the Carrizo Comecrudo, but also.
I think that somewhere in the wording it says that it's up to the commission to include other entities. I think that the Dallas Indian Commission is also included in this, which is not a tribal, but it has to do with Indian affairs, and I think that that's the whole perspective here. And my concern being that the only stake that the recognized tribes have is their trust lands. When it comes to desecration of sacred sites, like what is happening with us at Boca Chica, and also at sacred Garcia Pasture, and what's going to happen at Indian Hot Springs down in Reeves County, and what has happened along Jefferson County of the desecration of the wetlands of that area, is the lack of knowledge of the history of Texas and of these sacred places, like the misinterpretation and the assumptions of what is known as Shumla, what is actually Seminole Canyon on the Pecos, and things like this become, and a lot of other things that are on private land, including paint rock and these things, will be left up to the interpretation of non-experts. And just because you're a private landowner doesn't make you an expert about the property, and it continues the exploitation of the land, in a sense, by the fossil fuel industry, especially in this area that we are in right now, where the Eagle Ford Shale is more dominant. And one of the authors of the Senate Bill 136 just happens to be on the commission for the task force of the Eagle Ford Shale.
Who's that?
I think it's Judith Ceferini.
Judith Ceferini.
and she is a Democrat. But again, I think it also creates a stipulation on the how the fossil fuel industry is getting in to regulate any other kind of movement by any of the other tribes that are not recognized.
So it's a conflict of interest for someone who's that close to the fossil fuel industry to be heading up this bill, to be part of this commission, because clearly there's an agenda from the fossil fuel industry to create this.
No, of course.
Commission.
I mean, the whole thing behind it is that nobody was asked about it, and the only ones that are being talked to are the people that are recognized, which are also transplants or displaced entities in Texas, and it has a tendency to create a real division among the native people instead of inclusivity.
Microphones over.
And I'm sorry, instead of bringing inclusivity into what's going on, and I think that's one of the situations that at least I'm concerned about, and I'm hoping that some of the other non-recognized and pseudo state recognized tribes that have received resolutions of acclamation can be concerned about as well.
All right, I want to just hold that thought and keep thinking about that for a second. I do want to tell people that are watching on social media right now, yes, we are on Twitch. We are live on Twitch. If you want to join us there, don't forget to subscribe. Oh, Tonto210 said, I made it to Twitch. Yes, awesome. Thank you for joining us and including yourself on the chat. We are talking about SB 136, which is a proposed bill to create a Texas Indian Commission. Just to recap, because I'm looking at the bill, it's right in front of me right here. According to this bill, it is recognizing this commission, the commission members appointed under subsection 5, at least one member be a member of the Alabama Coshada Tribe of Texas, which is federally recognized tribe in Texas with trust land, but they are not originally from Texas. At least one must be a member of the Kickapoo Traditional Tribe of Texas. Again, they are a federally recognized tribe, but they are not from Texas. And the same thing for the Isleta del Sur Pueblo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The history of federally recognized tribes in Texas is that none of them are what scientists would say are indigenous, or how we would say it, or we would say original people of this land. And there is another list that says the remaining members may represent any of the following federally recognized Indian tribes of tribal organizations that maintain a connection to this state. That absentee Shawnee tribe of Oklahoma, Alabama Quasarte tribal town, the Apache tribe of Oklahoma, the Caddo Nation, the Cherokee Nation, Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe, Choctaw Nation, Comanche Nation, Coshada tribe of Louisiana, Delaware Nation, Jenna Band of Choctaw Indians, Jicarilla Apache Nation, Kialigi Tribe Town, Kickapoo Tribe of Oklahoma, Kiowa Tribe of Oklahoma, Mescalero Apache, Muskogee or Creek, Osage, Quapaw, Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, Shawnee Tribe, the Tlaploco Tribal Town, Tonkawa Tribe, Tunica Biloxi Tribe, and United Kituwa Band of Cherokee, and the Wichita and affiliated tribes. And I mean, a lot of them, as we can see there, are from Oklahoma. And of course, before there was even the state boundaries, well, not before the state boundaries, but while the assimilation of native peoples in Oklahoma and throughout the United States as they were pushed into Indian territory, that border between Oklahoma and Texas has shared some history. But none of these, not any of these tribes are original people of Texas. And so they're talking about making a commission that has seats for Native people, not original people of Texas, to have a commission that oversees as a liaison to the state. That'll speak to state agencies. Basically, the work that the tribe does, that you do, against the fossil fuel industry. I don't say it's going to delegitimize it, but it's going to make a commission that acts as a liaison to these state agencies instead of you being able to talk to them directly, right? And then you're saying also that they have a choice of picking other membership, right? So, like, if they don't want you on the commission, they don't have to have you on the commission, and you don't have a liaison to the state.
Then that goes true with a lot of the other tribes that have been around for a while, and some of these that have filed for federal recognition. We're just one step from filing federal recognition, and we just got our accreditation from the United Nations. And so I think that's one of the problems that we're looking at right now, where they say less government, but when it comes to us natives, they always want to regulate us. So, or deregulate, either way. And I think that's part of what's going on here, especially. I mean, I didn't even hear the mention of the Caddo people.
Oh, no, that was in there.
Were they? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
the Caddo Nation.
And the Caddo Nation, which, some of those are probably cousins to them. And I think there's a group of Native people down in southeast Texas, the Atacapa, who still live in their villages and are not being considered here either. I think that a lot of times what they do is, if you can just get rid of the original people, you can do whatever you want to. And a lot of these progressive colonized tribes are into oil, are into the fossil fuels, and into the extraction of it. And I think that we need to be aware of how much the fossil fuel industry is probably setting up these kind of laws to stop the actual protectors of the land, the original people.
What was this lady's name that you said that has ties to the fossil fuel industry that's heading up this bill?
Oh, Judith Safrani.
Judith.
Yeah. And she's out of Laredo.
Yeah.
And knowing the facts that Laredo's known for, and their colonized attitudes, we have to be able to recognize the fact that that's one of the oldest native villages that we know of was in Laredo at San Agustin Mission. There were over 300 Carrizo Come Crudos at that mission, and even at that, what is that? The Posada Hotel in Laredo. There's a historical marker there that even says Carrizo.
Yeah.
So I think that it's significant to raise the awareness of all the communities to what is going on here, because we ourselves know who we are, and we've been raised that way. We speak our languages, and some of these people are not even speaking their language anymore. And I have a deep respect, because I've worked for some of these tribes in Texas, and I have a deep respect for a lot of the individuals there. But I struggle with the mentality when money becomes the primary purpose of legislation, just like they did with the no protest law, and nobody stood up against it except the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe of Texas, and it wasn't a lobbying issue. It's about protecting our sites, protecting our land, protecting our water, and protecting the air that we breathe. I don't think anybody's that connected anymore, and they've lost their traditional concepts and principles of that. And so when you become disconnected because they took you off your land, it's not so much the fault of those people, but when they started moving you out of there, and that's coercion. So I don't even believe that our own relatives that are now quote unquote recognized by the government and have become these ideas of this is the only thing that's a native is not is not correct. And I think we need to do something about trying to get closer to understanding the significance of being a tribal people. And I mean, it's happened over the ages, like people like Tecumseh and, from the Shawnee who tried to bring the nations together. Pontiac tried to do it. Black Hawk tried to do it, and they were all.
So you see this as like a divide and conquer kind of thing.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So like the ones that have been given the legitimacy by federal recognition, those tribes now have a seat at a table of a commission where it's the illusion of inclusion. First off, also, how many of these tribes take fossil fuel money?
I would say maybe at least two of them. Back when the Patriot Act was passed, I happened to be part of one of the tribes on staff, and I told them not to sign the waiver of sovereignty. And every time you sign a waiver of sovereignty, you give up some of your sovereign rights as a tribe,
As a nation.
And so a lot of them have waived those sovereign rights, especially on the other side of this so-called wall. Mm-hmm. And if you're closer to the river, you're submitting to that lack of sovereignty or questionable sovereignty that you may have. And I think that this is what's happening here. I think
eminent domain.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. And so when they're coming in and pumping a lot of your trust lands, then of course they're going to pay you royalties, but it also makes you subject to those people that are paying you to do that. So
so they have a financial attachment to this too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely something they could lose.
Well, if we stop all fossil fuel in the state of Texas, which is actually.
You mean production?
Yeah, production. It would hurt a lot of what's going on, and people would be hurting monetarily,
financially.
Yeah.
That's why I think a few years ago, because.
But in protecting our lands, we have to talk about that.
Well, we do, because I mean, this is environmental racism to the T, and the extraction infrastructure, the extraction economy, and their whole point is to go in, extract these resources, and then they leave.
Of course,
they leave, and they leave the land decimated and devastated. The people are devastated because they had an economic boom, and now those jobs are gone, or they left because too many people were coming out from in, and the price, specifically speaking about the Rio Grande Valley or the Rio Grande Delta, the price has gone up so high. It's more expensive to have my kind of apartment that I have here in San Antonio in Brownsville.
Yeah.
Ever since Elon Musk and SpaceX has
been
out there.
That's right.
So
and that's
people can't afford to live now.
Well, I mean, how much of this? If we're talking about future generations, because we just had our what was it called, the Bridges Run?
Yeah, Bridges to the Ancestors.
Yeah, Bridges to the Ancestors, and if we're gonna be connected to those generations and continue to connect the generations, we have to be aware that this new concept of progression is nothing more than the colonization of the Americas, and that we're losing there because we're actually trying to communicate to the oppressor, and we're becoming them. We're becoming the oppressors, and that's what's happening with the federal recognition process, and that's what's happening in Texas, trying to develop the Indian Commission. Because I mean, at any time at all, Texas can decide, you're not, we don't recognize you as an Indian, and the federal government can do the same thing. It's all this. Everybody wants to be free of government, but except when it comes to Native people, I need more. I need this. I need that. All I want and all I ask as a member of the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe is to be able to say, look, these are sacred lands, and we're trying to protect them. That's why we put the Garcia pasture on the World Monument Watch list. And that's why we're trying to stop Next Decade, who is proposing the Rio Grande LNG, from building, because they're lying. There is no such thing as carbon capturing. I mean, we can tell that by what just happened in Pascagoula, Mississippi, where they stopped, where they sued the EPA. And if we have to do the same, we'll do the same. What we need to do.
Let's go back here. Who sued the EPA?
The
Cherokee Concerned Citizens?
Yeah, the Cherokee Concerned Citizens of Pascagoula.
Over allowing Chevron to convert used recycled plastic waste into renewable fuels and gas. It's a process tested at Chevron's Pascagoula refinery. So just like, because, and we've been talking about this, me and you specifically, because I saw that YouTube video from Some More News. Shout out to Some More News. Those guys are really funny. But they were saying that for years, the oil lobby has created another lobby called the Recycle Plastics Lobby to save face, to allow them to continue to make plastics, because plastics is a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry.
Exactly.
And so in order for them to get rid of some of this EPA pressure to stop what they're doing, they've created the lobby for recycled plastics, which you can't really recycle plastics. From what I know, like, you can't, like, it's been factually documented, you cannot recycle plastics. And we do that. We have like a bin for plastics and stuff like that. But we're still in the test phase, according to this
exactly
this EPA
all
lawsuit.
of this tested.
Is a test phase for recycling plastic.
And the federal government right now is, but for a long time, and that includes Clinton down to Trump and now to Biden, have all been very elusive about climate change and very elusive about the use of fossil fuels. So this is just another ploy to stop what is going on.
To stop the pressure from agencies,
right?
The federal agencies that are supposed to be overseeing this.
I think what they're trying to do is stop the pressure from the state agencies.
Okay.
The Railroad Commission, who is responsible for giving permits to easements on pipelines, and also on any what they call intrastate pipelines. Let me put it this way. I'll give you a quick analogy, and because I just wrote something last night, and it's about, I can tell you what a bee sting is, but can I tell you what the bee really does? And it's chore to do it, and why it protects who it is. See, the bee has to protect who it is, because it's also taking care of its home, of its land, of its hive. And for us, not recognizing that, not knowing that there is something to that, is a disconnectedness to what the bee really does for us, because it gives us honey, and it gives us beeswax, and all these other things that we utilize. But at the same time, if a bee stings you, what are you going to do? You're going to kill it. And that's exactly what's happening here, is that they don't see the connection the bee has to us through other functions that it creates in the environment, especially when it comes to water. Well, because it uses the water to build its hexagon.
Oh, okay.
Its columns.
Oh, yeah.
And the way it's very geometrical. Everything that's there, it's already a science. But when they tell me that only science can help us, then I'm going like you're very disconnected because science already exists. Just the fact that from the teaching of our hands, realizing we have those 28 joints multiplied by the 13 major joints in our body comes up to 364. Is that a coincidence, or is that? I mean, we're all the same. We all have that equation, and I think that this is what's happening here is that they're always trying to develop something further away from what really happened here 500 years ago. And that's why you still have the exports going on, the extraction industry so powerful. And when it's that powerful, it can start coming up with these kind of laws, like the no protest law, the House Bill 3557 that was passed back in 2019, and come up with Senate Bill 136, because they think that they're doing something right for the native people. And in reality, the people they're putting in charge are appropriating the identity of the original people of the land. In other words, they're not being very traditional. They're not asking for the permission of the people of the land. They're just doing what they want because, quote unquote, the United States government says so. So they've already bought into being, one of the house slaves.
Yeah, well, when it comes to operating the colonizer's world, there's always an excuse for why not to listen to the people of the land and your elders. There's always an excuse. It's like, well, because we need resources, or you just don't understand the benefit. That's the one that's like, you just don't understand. And that can also be like, I have the authority, I have the degree, I have the doctorate, those kind of things. Those are always reasons to not. And it's always that colonizer raising that other the ones that are making them comfortable. Those that make them uncomfortable, we become the criminals, and that's why the only bad side of the bee is seen when it stings you. Right.
They criminalize the bee because of that, and that's exactly what's happening here. And the fact that we don't want to honor their form of education and their form of accreditation, they have a hard time. That's why we went to the UN and said, look, you're the United Nations and we are a nation. And so I think that that's important for us to understand that we have a duty as a people of this land because of the language that we speak, the language that identifies the sacred sites and the sacred places of this land is our language. But when they come and tell me, well, we have to worry about setting up a curriculum for Native American Studies at UT, at the UT system, I struggle. And not that I'm not going to be a part of it. I just struggle in validating things that are not necessarily important to the situation that is happening today, because all you're doing is you're building up the problem more.
You're building up the system that has already dismantled our sources of knowledge.
Exactly.
Our literature, which is you always say immersion, but it's the journey. It's like going to these sacred sites, reading the history on the walls of these places, whereas like a teak in a teak to master historical knowledge of native people is not a teaching in our traditional sense, and it's from the colonizer's toolbox.
Well, I mean, and then they try to demonize us or degrade us in the sense of that we didn't.
Questioning it?
Huh?
Of questioning it?
Well, yeah. Well, not question. They don't question it.
Of us questioning.
Oh, yeah. They make us question it by saying stuff like, "Oh, well, y'all used to eat the nuts and berries out of the dung of the deer," and they put that in their history books. And so that's a way of making us more primitive. In other words, we don't have any science. We have no conclusion, even though it was the Americas that introduced the subject of zero.
Yeah, it's dehumanize and make us look like we're not civilized people because and that's the thing. That's the civilization has a much more broader definition now, which has to do with complex social ties and structures, which we all had. We had complex social structures. We had a complex language. There was definitely a way of educating each other, and then there were sources of knowledge that were valued more than others because they have to do with ways of survival. So yeah.
And the thing is that they gave us what's the right word? They give us the title of being don't be the victim anymore. When we were the victims, we decided no, we're survivors, and that survival motif is still very evident in everything we do in trying to protect that which is ours, and understanding that there's a connection to all of that. I mean, when I first started expanding our field in the fossil fuel industry, and what they were doing to us, because we've been fighting for a long time. I think that we need to recognize that they were just limiting it to whatever happened in Galveston or whatever happened in Pasadena and whatever happened in Surfside. And I started saying, well, there's a whole world here, and the Gulf of Mexico runs all the way from Florida down to the Yucatan, over to the Yucatan, and that's why we had to broaden the horizons in a sense, because for us there were no segmentations, and that's what this is happening right now, is that they created the segmentations through the politicians who think they're doing us a favor by setting up this Indian Commission at the same time, when we're still fighting, the things that they're promoting,
right?
And that's fossil fuels,
yeah.
And of course they're going to bring in the house slaves to do that, and that's the ones that are being recognized, and that's why they want to have these people. I don't see where they're not saying we need to have at least one representative of each one of the not recognized tribes of tech.
I didn't read anything in those chapter subsections about anything about non-recognized tribes, except for one intertribal group, the United Intertribal.
The Dallas Intertribal.
Yeah,
group.
no, it didn't say Dallas Intertribal. No, it said. I want to come back to the EPA thing real quick. We'll close out, but it says the Urban Intertribal Center of Texas. Is that in Dallas?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Those are the only ones that it concludes that have a seat already. That doesn't need approval or something, because I imagine like that they're going to need approval because it has all of this stuff about how they're not allowed to keep people out, removal from the commission for what is it, EEOC stuff. Like you can't do it because disability or age or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah. But they have all that stuff in there, but there's no mention of us. And it says, its goals promote recognition of the rights of the indigenous people to pursue cultural and religious traditions, confer with local, state, and federal agencies to encourage and coordinate resources and programs to meet the needs of indigenous people in the state. These are the people. The groups on this list are federally recognized tribes with trust land and funding. Those aren't the ones with the needs, I
know.
It's the people who are part of the unrecognized tribes and some other intertribal groups, some native nonprofits that are actually doing the frontline work for the people of this land.
Well, and that's one reason that we started at Monahans, because that was one of our sacred sites. And we went
Started Monahans for what?
For the bridge, for the ancestors.
The bridge to the ancestors, yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that people recognize just how far we extended ourselves as migratory people prior to any of the other tribes coming into Texas. We were already there, and we were actually trading with some of those tribes that were coming in. I think that there has to be a deep understanding of what is happening with a lot of the tribes that were romanticized into Texas, and and the lack of their quote unquote sacred sites.
Yeah.
And
well, the lack of knowledge of the sacred sites.
exactly.
Because I mean, when we talk about sacred sites, we're talking about areas that have supported people's interaction, not just within themselves, within their own people, but with the land itself. Their interaction with the land in understanding the terrain and understanding how to survive it. Whereas you have, and for thousands of years, mind you, like for hundreds of years, people use these lands. And if you go into an area and you claim a land for your people, you should know where these sites are.
Right. And for me, it's how easily the so-called recognized tribes have a tendency to forget how much they've had to fight the federal government just for their gaming rights,
right,
and to set up their casinos, especially in Texas. And
it's the illusion of inclusion.
Yeah, the illusion of inclusion, and they buy into it because they believe that they have the degrees in business, the degrees in legal studies. When
toilet paper.
Yeah, when all of it is based on canon law, yeah, and based on the law of the white man, and you can see that because now they're struggling to even set up term limits for the Supreme Court, and I think that it's time that our own people start recognizing what is really happening here with the Wheeler-Howard Act of 1934, which was the Indian Reorganization Act, which was actually should be called the ICA, which is the Indian Colonization Act. And it took away all the traditionals because that's what they've been doing in history, is killing all the traditional leaders. And so I think that that's one of the problems that we continue to not recognize, that it's the traditional people that are being sacrificed so that they can go through the illusion of inclusion. And that's what is happening is oh yeah, well, we're going to give you your own commission now. Well, if they're going to do that, well, I'd rather have my own commission and have something that goes against that, and file the first lawsuit against the making of this thing, especially the authors of this law that they're trying to pass. Because again, it's about they know what's best for us. We don't know what's best for ourselves. We should be creating our own commission, and not waiting and then file a lawsuit. Because if it comes worse comes to worse, constitutionally, Texas can divide into 5 states, and I'm ready to secede and create our own state. That's all. That's really native, and not something that's romanticized native. And looking at the whole ideal of. And I have to say this, and I have to say it out loud, and basically because everybody walks around with their wand of sage and, smudging and call it what you want, blessing or whatever. But in reality, those wands were put together for one thing when you were on the plains, and that was to warm up your food, because there's no woods out in the plains or in the desert. You had to put grass together along with your sage, light it up, and warm up your rocks to put into your punch, to warm up the food that was in the punch, because we didn't have any cooking utensils. And I think that we have to understand that pit barbecue, when we talk about pit barbecue, it's about a hole in the ground and hot rocks and cooking your food in the ground. We're so disconnected from that mentality. that we've lost it. We think that we just throw everything in the microwave and it's cooked. So I think it's. I just have to say that because our spirituality is lost when we buy into the new age ideals of I'm a holy man or a holy woman or a holy person. Let me put it that way. And I think that we need to be able to speak out about that more and more often, and understand that right now, if we don't know that some of these people that are doing DNAs and coming up with 50% or more of, or even 30% of native blood, an indigenous term. Indigenous is a term that is a catch-all term that doesn't give you a connection to the original people that you belong to. So I think that is the spirituality, and is finding your people again, because your people aren't lost. It's us that have been misguided and misled for a long time, and those of us who were able to maintain that, it's a blessing for us. Yes, and I agree, and I think that they should be listening to these things and seeing the strength of the ancestors as they continue to formulate and changes in the state of Texas.
So, yeah, these disconnections are rampant, running rampant in our society, and I think I think the environmental work that a lot of Native people do right now is a good way to reconnect. And before we close up for the day, we really just wanted to get together and get that information out about SB 136, and we wanted to talk a little bit about the EPA being sued in Mississippi, but just to kind of like look at this this lawsuit with the EPA. It says that with the support from the environmental law firm Earth Justice, the neighbors are now petitioning the U.S. Court of Appeals to review the EPA's 2022 consent order authorizing Chevron to use pyrolysis oils, which I'm not really sure. I'm going to look that up here in a second, see what that is. But I think this what they're doing is they're taking plastics and they're trying to turn it into renewable gas and energy. But like the risks to human life in the area is outweighing the benefits, it seems. Residents are 250,000 times higher to
Hold on a minute.
To cancer risk.
Go to Twitch.
I'm on Twitch. Yeah.
No, to tell them to go to Twitch if they want to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, guys, if you haven't made the switch over, I see a lot of people have. X-Man 60 Dance was on earlier. He said howdy. I said hello to the room. Tonto210 said that they made it to Twitch. Thank you for joining us there. We've had consistently 2 to 3 viewers watching on Twitch. I know we've had some people watching on social media. Please, if you can, go to twitch.tv. The channel is War Dance Productions, all one word, and it's you can subscribe or like the channel. We try to do this once a week. We weren't able to do it last week because we were doing the Bridge to the Ancestors run throughout Texas, trying to get awareness for the... oh, he's still watching that while at work. That must be Xavier. He's still watching while at work. He's on Twitch. Thank you for watching, bud. Yeah, just to bring awareness to the impact of the fossil fuel industry in Texas. We were talking about SB 136, the attempt to create an Indian commission that acts as the liaison to the state and its state agencies, which does not include unrecognized tribes like the Carrizo Comecrudo or native nonprofits that do environmental work. And then we also found out that Judith Zaffarini may have a conflict of interest in being part of this bill passing due to her ties to the fossil fuel industry, which gives us a clear motivation for why this bill is being passed, and then it's to not only control the narrative but also to control through bureaucratic red tape the process in which you can petition these state agencies and have your representation as Native people due to this new Texas Indian Commission that is being proposed.
And I also think that no one, including those that have gone through the process of recognition in Texas, can tell us, about our sacred sites, because none of them really know about it, because none of them really know the history of Texas and its apartheid and its ongoing genocidal mentality. And I think that this is just, again, another illusion of inclusion, like you keep saying.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole thing, SB 136, is about. It's like, look what I'm doing for y'all over here, but I'm going to continue taking and extracting and exporting all your resources to overseas. So.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Europe, just start. It's time for renewables. Stop taking our liquid natural gas.
Yeah, well, why don't you go test plastics yourself?
Oh yeah, test plastics yourself.
So
test turning plastics into renewable energy.
And quit and stop. Credit Suisse, just stop. Stop investing into the Rio Grande LNG. I mean, they already dropped 3 banks. They've dropped them. It's a bad business venture, and you're trying to tell me it's a good business venture? I mean, you still have to go under the river to start exploiting the Pacific coast. We need to stop. Need to stop it right now.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. Those of you who watched us on Twitch, thank you so much. If you haven't made the switch over to Twitch, please do that. We are Elder Speak on twitch.tv. It's War Dance Productions. This episode is brought to you in part by War Dance Productions and the Carrizo Comarco, the Tribe of Texas. Next week, we should have Uncle Jesse back with the group. Just today, he wasn't able to be here because he was out of town. And last week, we weren't able to do the show because we were on the road doing the Bridge City Ancestors run. So if you want to go to our YouTube channel, War Dance Productions, you can find full past episodes. And we're soon to get these all published on your podcast platforms. So we'll see you guys next week. Is there anything else you want to say, Dad?
Yeah, just X-Man, you should be over here too, man.
Yeah, you should come in too. Definitely. Anybody who wants to be a guest on the show that has, intimate, important knowledge about the land of our people, stories, just growing up, we would like to hear them and share them because important. We got some important history that we got to get out, oral history that we have to get out.
Yeah, that's the only way the history is going to get out there right now, because they sure are banning all the real history.
Yep. Yeah. All righty. Well, you guys have a good week. We'll see you next week, and take care of yourselves.
I am a payaso.